come on, Harry, you're not a baby. You don't have to do the royal engagements. You don't have to do any of that. What you need to do is stop the nonsense and act responsibly. And he hasn't really been doing that.
Welcome to the first episode of The Sun's new show, Royal Exclusive. I'm Matt Wilkinson, The Sun's Royal Editor, and joining me today to talk everything about the King, Prince Harry and that very short visit is author and journalist Rob Jobson. Hi Rob, thanks for coming.
Pleasure, always a pleasure.
We're living in unprecedented times with the royal family. Should we just jump straight in?
Absolutely, I mean it's incredible, history-wise. You're living history at the moment.
I mean, this week has been pretty crazy. So we started off obviously with the King announcing that he has cancer diagnosis, but when we look at the incident of Prince Harry has flown over to see his father, and when we break it down, he probably spent more time, well, just about the same amount of time in the air than he actually did in London. Do you think that, you know, the King was looking forward to seeing Harry? Did Harry have to come over? We can look at it in many different ways. It could be a case that, you know, he's a son who was desperately wanted to see his father after hearing the news, but also, you know, his dad had plans. He had healthcare plans.
Well, his dad phoned him up and told him that, you know, he had cancer, and you know, I think any son who's all that distance away would be very worried about it and upset, and wanted to probably go and see his dad, particularly after all the stuff that's gone on. But my understanding is that it was his decision to fly. It wasn't the King had not asked him to come. And before he could really do anything, Harry was at the airport saying, I'm getting on this plane. So I think that the King himself, as I understand it, was preparing to go off to Sandringham with the Queen and just have a bit of quiet time, you know, after all the dramas being announced. And then all of a sudden, Harry's on the plane, so they had to hang around until he arrived, and that's why he never really gave him very much time. I mean, I think the official narrative is that, you know, the King was touched, and he probably was touched that he'd made that effort. But I think also there was a little bit of being boxed into a corner here, and that, of course, he then had to stay around. I mean, one of the reasons he probably didn't want all the drama is because by the fact that Harry flying over, it does give the suggestion that the condition may be a lot worse than it actually may well be. And I think a lot of people would be sitting there thinking, oh, it must be bad because he's on the plane. And that sort of, you know, Harry brings with him a certain drama. We've all been discussing, haven't we, whether or not, or will there be a reconciliation with William and the King and everyone. And so it stirs that whole pot.
Because if you look at the timings as well, we know from, you know, we had the photographers outside Clarence House because we were expecting Harry to turn up. So we knew Harry turned up. He then raced towards Clarence House. The King was ready to leave. So the helicopter had landed at Buckingham Palace before Harry was still on the A4 or the M4 heading into London. He only got, we timed him in and out, so he only got 45 minutes. He's flown 5,000 miles. Do you think that was fair for the King to give him that short amount of time? Why would he be only given him that amount of time to see him? I've got my theories on this, but I was just wondering what you think.
No, I mean, the Queen was with the King, and let's be honest, he wasn't too complimentary about Queen Camilla and his book, Spare. He wasn't very complimentary about her in Netflix. He wasn't very complimentary. They don't get on. So, number one, that's there. But equally, they haven't really had a lot of contact, the King and Harry. I know that there were stories saying that he'd reached out Harry before when his dad was going in for that benign treatment for prostate, but I don't think that reach was ever actually connected. So there's not been a lot of contact. And, you know, that would then bring its own level of complexity and drama, which the King doesn't need at the moment. He just doesn't need it. And, you know, the royals do stick to a sort of pretty military clock. It would have been all worked out when he was going to be flying off, because you have to get the helicopter pilot there, you have to get clearance, you have to get all these things. And so his plans had to be changed. And, you know, one thing the King doesn't like is changing his plans. So, yeah, 15 minutes isn't long, probably long enough for a kiss, hello, and maybe a hug, and wish him all the best. And then he was back.
You're right. I'm interested about that the fact that it brought unwanted drama, because, you know, he'd had his care on Monday, and part of that would mean we don't know. We can't delve into speculation about what kind of. We don't know what kind of cancer. We don't know what kind of treatment he has had. But there will be, almost like when the Queen, during COVID time, she had Operation Bubble. So there will be a kind of care plan for the King, and so we know that he won't meet Sunak face to face until the 21st of February, and he's gone to Sandringham, where there's plenty of space to roam, plenty of fresh air that he can relax, and maybe his immune system's down after the care. So there may be an element that having Harry jet over from the United States to see his father as a surprise, they had to keep it short for maybe kind of health reasons before the king kind of went off to
I
Sandringham.
think it's possibly that, but I think it's also more to do with you don't want his blood pressure going up because you only have to, when you're sick, like the king's not very well, he's obviously very serious, whatever way you look at it, whatever type of cancer it is, he's undergoing treatment, and the best thing for him is calm. And let's be honest, after the initial kiss and hug, love you, Dad, hope you get better soon, what issues are going to get raised? Things that will send his blood pressure rising. So my feeling is it was probably best to just keep it on a very low-key basis. Glad that you came. But, from the outside world, he's flown in, he's got half an hour with the king. The Queen had said, right, we got to go. King says we've got to go. And then he doesn't even say, well, why don't you stay in your old room at the palace? He has to book a hotel room and he's off on the plane the next day. So, this is everyone tells us that, well, the narrative is that, he was touched and it was great. Maybe it's the start of a rapprochement. I wouldn't bank on it.
Well, that's what we're being told, isn't it? That maybe it was a sign of optimism because, there was a gesture of flying over, the king agreed to meet him. But look, taking a step back, is Harry not getting the message here? So he's been evicted from Frogmore Cottage. He third row at the coronation, and then he gets half an hour or 15 minutes with his father after flying across the country to.
Well, I think that's exactly it. I mean, look, Matt, the coronation, he sort of left with his tail between his legs. It was a bit embarrassing, wasn't it? I mean, everyone thought he was going to. I think he thought at least he'd be in the front row. He should have read the Sun. I mean, it was clear where he was going to sit. He was going to sit with the non-working royals, but I think also there hasn't been a lot of context. So maybe he was fed up with it and said, the king's not available now, the king can't speak to you now. And thought the only way I'm going to get to see my dad or actually have any contact, if you are, feeling a little bit, I don't know, so guilty, but you're feeling a bit lost, is to get on a plane and go and see him. And, in that respect, I admire Harry for doing that because if he wasn't getting through, and he said, well, I just want to see my dad. And, I know there's been a lot of bad blood and, things that like being accusations of racism and all this sort of stuff. It hasn't gone down too well at the palace. We know it hasn't.
We speak about racism. Obviously, Meghan didn't come. The accusations have been made, last year.
Very strong accusations.
Would the king have wanted to see Meghan? Do we think? I mean, is it wise that Meghan didn't come? She hasn't said anything publicly, or was it wise just for Harry to come?
I think, given what's going on with Catherine sick and things that have been said about her. The Queen obviously just wants to look after the king, she's like there, making sure nobody upsets him. And it's not just his son or his sons or his family or anything. All the other courtiers should be saying, "Oh, can we just look at this paper or that paper?" The Queen will be making sure that he's protected and that's stopped. And I think personally that whatever way you look at it, Harry flying over, I can understand he's a caring son. Is somebody that might be feeling, maybe I've got this all wrong. But he probably just wanted to say, wish his dad the best. But it's a clear message there. You're not really, you're certainly not forgiven, and you've certainly done a lot of damage.
You've got to do a lot more than fly 5,000 miles.
Well, the fact that his brother didn't even bother to acknowledge him. I mean, they were very close. I mean, they were close can be, and he didn't even bat an eyelid. There was no way that was going to happen.
Yeah, totally. So the king, we now know, we believe he's going to be staying at Sandringham for a long period of time. He might see the Prime Minister face to face on the 21st. He's going to rest and recuperate there, but become an outpatient at a London hospital if and when he does actually come back. What will the king be doing, do we think? Because there's no engagements. Which is good. We often look at the royal family and we judge them by what we see in public, whether they are attending engagements or functions or charities. But he has a massive constitutional role as the head of state. Can he, he reads the red boxes. We live in a time of political and kind of world turmoil. How will he be dealing with that role of being a king?
I think a lot's been said about it. I mean, the only thing about the role of the monarch is that is the only role that matters in a constitutional monarchy, parliamentary democracy. The Queen, late Queen, she was struggling with her eyesight towards the end. She would have taken her a long time to get through her red box. The king, even in this state, will get through his red boxes before he's had his boiled egg in the morning. You know, he's a voracious reader, and he'll be reading an awful lot. And so, not only his red boxes, he hasn't really had time to relax. I mean, he hasn't been able to paint really. Watercolorist, he's a brilliant watercolorist. He hasn't had a chance to do that. I remember speaking to him at Dumfries House, and he said, "Oh, I just don't get the time." Now, what they will try to stop him doing is having the contact with his foundation and all the charity work he does. And I think that needs to be pushed back for other people to involve themselves with. And he should just focus on his constitutional affairs. Other than that, a bit of painting, maybe listening to Leonard Cohen, just relaxing. I would have thought that he'll stay at Sandringham House until they sort of shut it down. And then he may go to Wood Farm, because remember when the late Queen was very sick, she went to Wood Farm. It's where Prince Philip lived as well most of the time. It's a very relaxing place, and he can be there with just a couple of servants and just really chill out.
There's a chapter in your book which you very kindly brought us in.
I did, yeah, there it is.
There's a really good chapter in the book which I have enjoyed, and it talks about the period of history when Britain went to war in Iraq, and that the Queen was speaking to Tony Blair and taking briefings, because what people don't know is that, you know, once a week, or the monarch has such great access to the Prime Minister to know actually what's going on, and gets told, you know, about world affairs. And
well, the other way around, as she would say, he has access to the Queen.
He has access to the Queen, yeah. But they get you know, they know what's happening, what the Parliament are actually doing. And I think in that chapter you mentioned that maybe Charles, if he was king then, he may have delve deeper into what happened in Iraq. We've got, you know, massive world affairs at the moment. If he is ill, if he is unable to, you know, really kind of do this constitutional role, do you think he will have to, you know, really struggle to carry out this role when he's ill up at Sandringham?
Look, we don't know how the treatment's going to go, but one thing I would say, absolutely, I don't think there'll ever be an abdication, and I know I've heard people talking about that, and, you know, pundits, it's a no-no. There's no need to. We have a statute for a regency, so we don't need anybody to abdicate. Number two is I don't think it's going to come to that, because if you look at how frail the Queen was, the late Queen was, towards the end of her life, probably all the way through her 90s actually, the king, the current king, was there for her, supporting her. And when, you know, he went to Cheltenham, he went to all of these things. So there's no issue there. I think that William would have to step up. He hasn't. People are saying he's stepping up now. He hasn't. I mean, you've got to remember that the only thing he's done so far is an investiture. When he was doing the investitures, along with Princess Anne and the then Prince of Wales, for the Queen towards the end. So nothing has changed. As for the bilaterals, we saw the King in UAE. You were the only two reporters there, and he was on, you know, great form. He was. What was going on behind the scenes were very important bilaterals to do with what was going on in the Israel and all the situation that was going on there. So it's an area that he will continue to do. Will he continue to take phone calls from prime ministers around the world? I think he will. I think he will, whilst he can. And if he can't, then that's when William would step in. But I see that side of it as not being an issue. He will not see him doing is the public face-to-face duties. And where that's the case, we might see William step in, say, for doing receiving the credentials of a new ambassador or something like that. I can see that happening. But as for the King giving up his position constitutionally, I just don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't think there's a need for that to happen.
It's interesting you say Dubai. We also saw when we went to Kenya, and that was gruelling, France, state visit, and Germany. We know that, Camilla has told him to slow down because he was, you know, he's taken on all these extra constitutional roles.
Sun. And I mean, at the time, actually, you look at it now, and at the time, there's all these other people saying, "Oh no, it's just not true." You know, it was absolutely bang on. And slow down is what she was saying. Listen to your body. And that stage, she had no idea he had developed cancer. So, I mean, what is interesting, I think, with what's going to have to happen in the future, and let's all pray that it happens, the King makes a full recovery, he's still going to have to slow down. He's still going to have to the people around him are going to have less expectations in terms of the way that his schedule is drawn.
Do we have too high expectations?
Yes, I think the media does, I think everyone does. And I think that even if you look at people like William and Kate, they don't do as many jobs as the king. The two people that do are the king and Princess Royal, who looks frankly like sprightly as anything, Princess Royal. But the fact is, I do think they're going to have to focus on his constitutional role. And look, he does so many other things. I just think he's probably going to have to realise, in November he's 76 years old. He's very fit, 76-year-old. He eats well and all these things. But he's had this scare. Let's hope he gets through it. And I'm sure he will. But you can't come back at the same pace. And that means things like a trip to Canada, and Chogham itself in Samoa, a trip to Australia. Well, that's a very grueling trip. We've been on these, and we're just doing the press side of it. We could go and have a beer in the evening, just about. He's really relentless. When we leave those receptions or those dinners, you think, oh, good, I can go and have a relax. They're still there. You're still on parade, and I think that people don't really understand the level of the intensity of what they're doing, particularly the King and Queen in their mid-70s.
Yeah, well, they get judged by the number. There's often a timetable for who's done the most engagements.
Yeah.
But that's just what we see. That's just the public aspect. But there's so much more, as you're pointing out there.
But the thing about him is he is somebody that delves right into it. I think that William is slightly different. He's more of a delegator. And maybe that's the same way that the Queen was, actually. And in a way, that's probably what the King will have to be more of, a delegator, and leave it to other people to make these decisions. Whereas he tends to be right on top of everything.
So I think we kind of want him to just relax at Sandringham.
We just want him to be healthy and to focus on his health, maybe doing a bit of painting, get people off his case. People keep coming in and asking questions, putting another thing on his plate. This is probably why it would be quite good, as I wrote the other day. I think that it would be good if William and Harry, that were not making the latter stages of his life a misery, which is what he said they were doing. And really, between them, they're not boys anymore. They're both men, and it's time to grow up.
So William and Harry don't talk at all. How much do you think the King or William would they want Harry to step into some of the roles, or to
no, I don't think that'll ever happen. I heard that speculated the other day. Harry's gone. He's made his bed. He's going to lie in it, and that's it. But what I think could happen is what William did before, when they had that walkabout around the time after the Queen's death. There was a truce, wasn't there? They had the four walking along. Don't have to do that. They don't have to be so graphic, because I think Kate said at the time it was the hardest thing she ever had to do. But I think what they've got to do is two brothers have to bury the hatchet and say, okay, we'll agree to disagree. Let's agree not just talking about each other anymore, and let's just try to build a relationship for the sake of the King. Because ultimately they are men, they're not boys.
Well, how do they bury the hatchet? I mean, Sun readers would love Harry, not love, but they would be happy if Harry, kind of was reunited with his father and his family. But they believe that Harry needs to apologise. I think Harry has said that he wants an apology, or people close to him say they want an apology.
Well, I think it's time for everyone, whoever wants an apology, just apologise to whoever. You've got to do it privately. Say, I'm sorry about what I said, and you're sorry about what you said, and then draw a line under it, because what they must realise, and I've lost my dad, anyone who's lost a parent, is that you suddenly grow up quite quickly after that, because whilst they're alive, you've still got that paternal bond where, oh, really, can they sort it all out for me? But, if once your parent passes, you've got to get on with it. And I think that really this is proof that the King's not indestructible. He's a human being. He's been there for them all of this time, all of their lives, ever since they lost their mum, and they blame, there's a lot of blame went on there. But he's been there for Harry in particular all that time. It's time to pay back now. It's time for them to grow up, be men, not Diana's boys, as everyone keeps. I had that referred to. Oh, poor Diana's boys. One is 41 and one is 39, and they're not boys. They're not babies. They're men. Their fathers, and they've got to grow up and say, actually, it's now time we did more for the King. And I think William is certainly doing that. You saw William, as we see him in the paper here, top son. He's been out there doing what is required of him as a son. He was there for him at the coronation. He's been there for him ever since he's been king, as a liege man. Well, come on, Harry, you're not a baby. It's time for you to be a liege man. You don't have to be, You don't have to do the royal engagements. You don't have to do any of that. What you need to do is stop the nonsense of playing up for getting cheap publicity, and act responsibly. And he hasn't really been doing that. And I think that now he must realise that he owes his father an apology and he owes his brother an apology. If he wants William to do the same, then fine. If William probably would do that, I think, in private, but then it might then get released, mightn't it? By, William has apologised to me. It'd be the next thing that comes out in the paper.
So we talk about the difference between Harry and William. Obviously, Harry, in one way, he's been on a few red carpets lately, and then he jetted back for this short meeting with the dad. But William, front page of the Sun with Tom Cruise, top son. But he said some nice words. He said, basically, he said, thank you for the good wishes for Pa, or for his father, and for Kate. I mean, what do you think about William?
Well, I thought it was quite personal, and I noticed he didn't say the king. He said to his Pa, his father, and I thought that was quite a nice touch actually, because there was always that, always found it jarred. I remember when you get Prince Andrew during the fire of Windsor, he said, Her Majesty the Queen is, and it was all this sort of bit too, not personal. But William is a personal guy, and I think that I thought he actually, he must be, whatever's going on in his mind, he didn't show it yesterday. He was on top form. He performed exactly how he should. He reminded me in many ways of how the Queen would be. He was pretty stoic, just carried on, and thanks very much, just get on with the job. And I think he was, look, there he is posing on the front for the front page picture. He knows he's got a job to do, and he just got on and did it. I mean, I'm not really having a go at Harry. I think that Harry is a very emotional guy. He's got his own life to lead, and people were saying, "Oh, well, you shouldn't be overly critical. He's come all this way to see his dad." Yeah, he flew first class. He can afford to do it. The point of it is, though, there's things he should start doing now. And as you said rightly, number one is, I'm sorry, Dad, I got this wrong. But is he going to do that? I mean, is he going to give all the money back? I doubt it.
So William's also been looking after his wife, Princess of Wales, which has taken up his time, but which we share the best wishes. But you mentioned about the king, or we talk about the king not being indestructible. What do we know about his health? Because he's in his mid-70s. He has been through a lot of stress the last couple of years, but he loves the countryside. He loves being outside. He does care for his health. He's a healthy man, isn't he?
Well, we saw pictures of him when he was on that tour of Jamaica, not that long, tour of the Caribbean, not that long ago. He's a fit guy. He's got the same. He's not. I wish I had the same sort of frame I had when I was 25. He literally does. He's a fit guy, but his diet. Somebody doesn't eat lunch. He has he likes certain foods. He has all prepared freshly. He's somebody I think that has taken care of himself, and then this has happened, and it's going to be a shock to him. But I think because he is a fit man, hopefully it'll just be a wake-up call to everyone around him to sort of make them realise that they've got to, as they did with the Queen, to pace things rather than just throw everything at him.
It's a wake-up call. We've only got one king. We want to keep hold of him.
We do, and he's been a good... I mean, a lot of people talk, didn't they? Oh, he's going to be a meddling king, he's going to be this, he's that. He's been brilliant, I think. He's a convening king. He's been somebody that's brought people together. In a world when we don't have many statesmen, we have a lot of despots and a lot of slightly strange people leading countries. This is a man with all these years of experience, with contacts from different political scenes around the world, from the Middle East to Western democracies, who's got a wide understanding of how the world works and the problems facing the world. We need him, and I think that he's just going to have to just take it a bit easy for a little while, then come back fully rested and fully fit.
Great. Well, hopefully later this year we can talk about him, making a comeback and seeing him happy and ready again.
Absolutely. Brilliant stuff.
Thanks, Rob. So that's it for today. Thanks very much for watching. If you have made it this far, you must have enjoyed yourself. So please click below and subscribe for more royal news.